Welcome to the Saturday Cadence Podcast. I'm Blake Biscardi, and remember, the Saturday Cadence Podcast is the heartbeat of college football.
Chaos has struck college football again. A lot of big results from week 7 of the college football season. But the leading story on today's show, Penn State fires head coach James Franklin after nearly 12 seasons with the program. This happened around lunchtime on Sunday. Again, James Franklin is out as Penn State's head coach. He has been fired. Welcome into Saturday Cadence, everybody. My name is Blake Biscardi, and we have a huge show on tap for you guys today. A lot to discuss, just like I said. This is the heartbeat of college football. Leading story on today's show, James Franklin has been fired from Penn State, and that is going to send shockwaves throughout the college football world. It's also going to hear a few applauses if you are in the Penn State fan base. That's something that has been popular. The thing I want to say to Penn State fans listening, I want to caution you. Remember Nebraska when they fired Bo Pelini. Remember Florida when they got rid of Dan Mullen. Remember Auburn when they got rid of Gus Malzahn. These are the things I want to caution you about when you make a move like this. James Franklin was a pretty much surefire 9-10 win coach every single year. He struggled in the big games. And ultimately, that loss to Oregon was the straw that broke the camel's back, because the expectations are for national championships at Penn State. Now, they've not won one since the 80s, and they've won the Big Ten 4 times since they've joined the conference. That's a story for another day. But what I want to say, Nebraska has fired Bo Pelini back in 2014. Do you know how many times Nebraska has won 9 games since they fired Bo Pelini? One time. That was in 2016. Nebraska has not won 9 games since 2016. Dan Mullen at Florida. He gets fired. Florida has not won 9 games since Dan Mullen has been fired. Auburn, Gus Malzahn was fired. Auburn has not had a winning record since Gus Malzahn left. Don't let that be you, Penn State. That is my caution. That is my lead for this show tonight. It's pretty much insane. It is crazy to think about. Would I have fired James Franklin if I was Penn State's athletic director? I don't think that I would have. And this is the argument that I have said from before. Who are you going to hire? And that's the big question, because could you be like Nebraska, Florida, and Auburn in this situation? Yeah, really easily you can be. But could you hit a home run? Do you have the next Ryan Day? Do you have the next Kirby Smart? Do you have the next Lincoln Riley? These are the types of hires you need to make in a critical spot in your program's history. This coaching hire is going to be remembered, because this coaching hire is going to shape the future of Penn State football. And you may say, well, that's obvious because they're going to be the head coach, so of course they shape the future. Right. But what future is it going? What's the future going to look like? Under James Franklin, you pretty much knew the future that you were going to have. But James Franklin was closer to the top end of college football than he was to the bottom end of college football. So you better get this hire right. You better bring in the right person who brings in the right staff. Franklin took some risks in this offseason, bringing in a guy like Jim Knowles that seemed like a sure thing. He brought in Andy Kotelnicki a year ago to be offensive coordinator. Him and Drew Aller haven't really meshed well. And these are the products of the decisions. Life is about decisions. It's about choices. And choices and decisions, they have outcomes. This is an outcome of that decision. For James Franklin this year at Penn State, there was national championship expectations tagged all across that team, all across that program, all across the state of Pennsylvania. And you know what? They started the season ranked 2 in the AP poll. 16 days ago, depending on when you're listening to this show, James Franklin was the head coach of a top 5 team in college football. James Franklin was leading a team out into a whiteout crowd against Oregon in a monster game. He was the coach in overtime. After playing poorly for 3 quarters, his team found it within itself to battle back, get to overtime, then take the lead in overtime, then go to a second overtime. The interception from Drew Aller changed the complete trajectory of this season for Penn State. I told you right afterwards on this show on the Monday following that loss to Oregon, I said, go look back at Penn State historically after a big emotional game. In this case, it was a loss. And in the cases I was referring to, it was also a loss. And sometimes it snowballs. In the biggest emotional letdown spots, it has historically snowballed to the following week. That was exactly what happened against UCLA. Now, I didn't pick the upset against UCLA. I'm not trying to take that much credit. But if you look back, Penn State has lost or has found itself in deep quicksand the week after an emotional loss in a big matchup. Most of those matchups have been against Ohio State. And again, you could see the signs for this. That's what was happening. And now it has spun across 3 weeks. They lose to Oregon, they lose to UCLA, and they lose at home to Northwestern. Jim Knowles' defense, you may as well just drive a bus through some of those holes. Northwestern was able to sustain a really good long drive at the end of the game to take the lead. And you're just sitting there scratching your head of how is this happening? Penn State's entire season was built on, hey, we have a national championship that we can go chase. They brought all these guys back. They hired Jim Knowles right from Ohio State. They went all in on this season. They went all in on this season. And you know what? It didn't pan out for them. They lost to Oregon. And where you see the championship medal of your team is when you face adversity. And of all the adversity that Penn State thought that they were going to face this year, I don't think that they were built to handle a loss to Oregon in that spot. It was at home. It was before Ohio State. The opponent wasn't Ohio State for once. It was your year. It was your game. Oregon was a young team. First time starting quarterback, really, with Dante Moore. Everything was there. And it snowballed. And it's a leadership failure. It's a team failure. It's unfortunate for James Franklin. You hate to see this be the way that it ends for him on 3 straight losses in State College. You don't like to see that. There's a human side to this. But for James Franklin, ultimately, he could not get it done in the big game. But for Penn State, can you find better than 9 or 10 wins a year? Is that coach out there for you? Do you think that you know who it is? That's the big question here. If you think you know, and you're right, and it's a genius. This is a $50 million decision to tell a 9 or 10 win coach not to coach here anymore. You're paying $50 million telling him, don't coach here anymore. You better be right. That's a huge investment. And you better have the higher right. Because I'll tell you what, this isn't the Big Ten you walked into. This isn't the Big Ten of 5 years ago. The Big Ten conference is going to be highly competitive at the top end. Ohio State's not going anywhere. Michigan's hanging around. USC, Oregon, Washington looks good. These teams are around. This is going to be a deep conference. You can't get stuck saying, oh, we got 8 wins. You don't want to look back on this hire 3 to 5 years from now and saying, man, I miss James Franklin. That's really the take. That's the thought process. That's what should be going on here. Because you're firing 10 wins in the middle of the season, which is crazy. But I get it. I understand from a Penn State perspective. You want to win the big games, and you're not getting the results that you think you're going to get. You're not getting the results that are talked about or promised. I understand the frustration. I understand the frustration from the administration. But you're going to have to find better, and better might be harder to find than you think. Because I'll tell you what, Ryan Day is not leaving Ohio State for Penn State. Kirby Smart is not leaving Georgia for Penn State. I don't believe Kalen DeBoer or Dan Lanning would leave their schools for Penn State. Dabo Swinney is not leaving. Steve Sarkisian is not leaving for Penn State. But you know what? Is Texas firing Steve Sarkisian for this? I get it. It's longer. He's not really won the big game either. Marcus Freeman's not leaving Notre Dame for Penn State. Brian Kelly's not leaving LSU. Who are you going to hire? That is the big question. If Matt Rule is your guy, that's who I'm hearing so far at the beginning of this search, is that he's going to be the first option and phone call. And if he says no, the head coaching search is going to expand elsewhere. It's going to be national. If you think that Matt Rule is your guy, because you have ties to him being an alum, you have ties to him because your athletic director was his athletic director at Temple where he was successful. He has a proven track record. If Matt Rule's your guy, then Matt Rule's your guy. But Matt Rule better be the guy. Matt Rule's got to come in here, and he's got to do better than James Franklin did at Penn State. Matt Rule's got to go beat Ohio State. Matt Rule has to go beat Oregon. Matt Rule has to go beat Michigan. Matt Rule has to win a game in the college football playoff against a major opponent. Matt Rule can't just come in here and win 9 or 10 games and say, all right, guys, I did it. Oh, no. That next head coach at Penn State's got to do what James Franklin did and take it a step further. That next head coach has to figure out how to beat Ohio State. That next head coach has to figure out how to beat Oregon or Michigan or Georgia or Alabama or Texas. That's what the next head coach of Penn State has to do. That is the big question. Can they do it? Curt Cignetti is a name that's going to get thrown around. I personally do not think this is opinion. I personally do not think he's going to leave Indiana. Now, money talks, but Indiana, I think, would pay him whatever to stay there. He is building a really good program there over the last 2 years. He has as many top 10 wins as James Franklin does, and he's done it in the last couple of weeks over Illinois and over Oregon. We're going to get to that game in a minute. That's all the stuff that you need to think about right now. If you are the Penn State administration, if you're a Penn State fan, just be careful what you wish for. Again, I get it, but now is the time to really do some self-reflection, some introspection. What is the Penn State football program? What should the expectations really be? Are we a national title competing program? Is that who we are? Is that who we can be? I'm not here to answer those questions. Those questions are for you. I can tell you my opinion, but those questions are for you to answer. My opinion of that is that Penn State's a really good program. It's a top 10 program in the sport. Is it a national champion contender right now? I don't think it is. Could it have been? Probably. Recruiting averages have been in the top 15. Unless you have a superior coaching advantage or you have a superior game plan, just talent-wise, if Ohio State has a top 3 to top 5 to top 7 national recruiting average, you're already playing at a disadvantage slightly. That means you have to make up that ground in scheme, in play calling, in execution, and in coaching. And Penn State has fallen short in those categories. But this is a risk. This is a major risk for Penn State to go ahead and make a decision like this mid-October of a national championship expectation season. Either way, do I think Penn State was going to lose a couple more games? Yes, because the locker room, he's lost the locker room. The program was out after they lost to Oregon because that game became so big that they couldn't overcome it if they lost. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to finish the season 3-9, but they got to watch. You're going to Kinnick Stadium on Saturday. You have a bye week. You're going to Columbus the following week. You're home against Indiana the week after that. This could be real where it's 3-6 Penn State. That could be a thing. Just prepare yourself. Those are my thoughts on the Penn State coaching search and on James Franklin right now. Again, $50 million buyout. Penn State is going to move off of him, and they're going to go from here. A national coaching search is underway for Penn State, and we will see where they land again. That first name that I have heard is Matt Rule, and we are going to see where Penn State goes and what direction they take with this coaching staff, with this program, and if they think they can really get to a true national title contender. In the Big Ten, outside of this James Franklin news, which was humongous, and again, this is going to parlay that Northwestern beats Penn State. Again, I just want to mention that. We're not going to go through that game because the result of that game was what we just spent the opening part of the show discussing, which James Franklin is out as Penn State's head coach. I mentioned Kirk Cignetti. I mentioned Dan Lanning. Well, those two head coaches just happened to play a football game on Saturday in Eugene. And it just so happens that the nation's longest home winning streak came to an end on Saturday. Kurt Cignetti and Indiana went to Autzen Stadium and defeated Oregon. They're the only Big Ten team to win a game at Autzen Stadium against the Ducks. And they did it 30-20 by double digits. Kurt Cignetti, in 2 short years, has turned Indiana into a national power, into a contender, and into a legit football team. Last year, there was a lot of fraud talk, and you know what? It was kind of valid. They had a great record. They had a soft schedule. They went into Columbus, and they were completely outmanned. They were out-talented. They did not have as much talent as Ohio State. You could clearly see that. But Cignetti is a proven winner. They got to the college football playoff against Notre Dame. The Irish beat them in South Bend. But this year, we can tag that contender title to Indiana. They now are in one of the 2 driver seats for a spot in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. They are on the inside track for a college football playoff spot. They are ranked 3rd in the latest AP poll, which is correct. That's where they should be. And they have defeated Oregon 30-20 in Eugene. That is really difficult to do. It's really difficult to do. Neither team was outstanding on 3rd down, but Indiana's defense played really well. They forced 2 turnovers from Oregon, and they held the Ducks to only 267 yards, 2.7 yards per carry on the ground. Really good numbers from the Indiana defense. They did hold Oregon to 3 of 14 on 3rd down. Fernando Mendoza is playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Again, he's a transfer from Cal. He is going to continue to ascend on Heisman boards. He was 20 for 31 in that game, only 215 yards, but those are big 215 yards. When you're playing a top 10 defense, you're not throwing for 3 bills. 215 in the touchdown. He did have the lone interception. Those are good numbers. That's a great day. Neither team really ran the ball all that great. Elijah Surratt, though, he had the big day, leading all receivers. He had 8 catches, 121 yards, and that touchdown. So Elijah Surratt, huge playmaker for Indiana. This team is real. This team is legit. And for Oregon, questions now. The questions for Oregon. You lose to Penn State. You beat Penn State. Then you lose to Indiana. How good are you? If there was this talk that, okay, Penn State was a top 5 team, and then Penn State was a team that could contend for national championship. You go to the whiteout, you beat them. Okay, respect. Then Penn State loses to UCLA and Northwestern. I don't think that's indicative of how talented this Penn State team is. But if you're Oregon, how good are you? I think Oregon's a really good football team. But Oregon now has to go respond and show us that. I'm going to go through the remaining schedules for both Indiana and Oregon here. Oregon has Rutgers, Wisconsin, at Iowa, tricky game, Minnesota, and then they close the year with USC at home, on the road against Washington. Washington should be ranked. It is ridiculous that they are not ranked. Their only losses to the number one team in the country, and they are not ranked. They're 5-1. Ridiculous. But again, we'll get to that later in the show. Oregon's schedule, I could see another loss or two on there if they really aren't that good. But I believe Oregon is a good football team, and I think that Oregon is going to be a good football team. I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think that Dan Lanning is going to turn this team around. Oregon always plays motivated and inspired football. That's what I expect as a rebound from this game. Tough loss, but you know what? You can afford that in this 12-team era. You got to get right, and then you got to get back on track, and that's what they're going to do. On the other hand, Indiana, they've got Michigan State, UCLA. What a surging team with Jerry Neuheisel. Then you got Maryland, Penn State, again, stock tanking, Wisconsin, and Purdue. Toughest remaining games on this Indiana schedule appear to be UCLA and potentially Penn State, because that is a road game for Indiana. So 11-1, potentially 12-0, wow, are in the sights of Kurt Cignetti's team in Indiana. So that is something to keep your eyes on for sure in the Big Ten, the college football playoff race, and dare I say the national championship picture? Dare I say it? We shall see. That remains to be seen. I will not be making that such claim until maybe late November, early December, if we even get there. That's when that tag would go on. But around the country, though, big results in the SEC yesterday. Someone needs to do something about these SEC officials. I'm sitting there watching the Georgia and Auburn game. My goodness gracious. There was a lot of struggles in that game with the officiating. It was just egregious. Before we get to that, Red River, what we thought was going to happen, Texas was going to rebound, and Texas did. Texas was in desperation mode. Texas was backed into a corner, and Texas responded. And that is what Texas needed to do. Texas needed to respond, and Texas did. I respect Texas for their performance. I think that's what they needed to do. I think this is the kind of team that they are. And maybe this is where they turn the corner on the season. Maybe this is where they do it. They gained 304 yards on Brett Venables' defense. They were 10 for 17 on third down. Really good clip. They ran the ball for 138 yards. They were balanced in their attack, and they just took it to Oklahoma all game. This was not one that was really ever in doubt for Texas once it got to the second half. Once they got going after halftime, once they gained control of the game, they never lost it. It was a battle early. It was low scoring. It was a little bit of a chess match. But all in all, John Mateer, they forced him to throw 3 interceptions. And Arch wasn't bad on the day. He had a really high completion percentage, completing 21 to 27 passes, only 166 yards in the score. But that was really the big thing. They forced John Mateer into making some turnovers. That defense played really, really well. This was always going to be a defensive battle. And it was. Texas notches a humongous win over Oklahoma. They surged themselves right back into the AP poll. And Oklahoma, this was a loss again. They didn't want, but could afford. But that schedule gets difficult. So if John Mateer's health is in question, if this is the beginning of maybe a slide for Oklahoma, a regression to the mean, something of that nature, take your breath. Let's figure this out. And let's get moving again, because that SEC is crowded. Crowded, I tell you. There are a lot of teams in contention. There are no elite teams as of this moment. Alabama certainly looks like the best so far. Texas A&M, Ole Miss trying to state their cases about that, although Ole Miss takes a step back this week, even though they won. So maybe a little bit of pause there. Texas A&M and Alabama sitting atop that conference right now in terms of the eye test, even though Alabama still has that hole on its resume where it lost to Florida State, a team now whose stock is also dipping down a little bit. Alabama, though, just like I said, they had a tricky game at Columbia. It was 27-24. Alabama wins this game, and they survive. Missouri was driving at the end. Bo Pribula threw an interception late, and Alabama survives. This was a tough stretch for Alabama. They are coming off. This is their 3rd straight ranked opponent. This was a tough physical matchup. It was an early kick. This was one of those dynamic spots where I took the Missouri plus 4.5. That cashes, had Alabama to win the game, doubled up there, threaded that needle. It's about the third time we've done that this season, and that's paid off for us. But Ty Simpson, he continues to look good as Alabama's starting quarterback. He's one of the best passers in the country, one of the top quarterbacks in the country by how he's playing. He threw for 3 more touchdowns on Saturday. Jam Miller starting to get some mojo back, running the football. He had 85 yards on the ground. And these Alabama receivers, more quiet day from Jeremy Bernard. And that's okay because they spread the wealth out a little bit. Latsier Brooks, Isaiah Horton, they were the two who were involved the most for Alabama. So it's good to see them spreading the wealth. It's also, we got to talk about Caden Proctor because they are using him like an X factor. He has been everywhere. We saw that screen that happened against Georgia. We saw a wildcat formation for him. I mean, they are getting really creative with the athletic big man, Caden Proctor, up front. But Missouri takes this loss again. I'm telling you, this SEC just gets more crowded by the day. These results, I mean, we are going to, I'm sure, have to figure out the tiebreaker rules for this conference once we get into late November, early December, as this race really tightens up and takes form over the next couple of weeks. More results are going to be relevant on Saturday. A monkey wrench that could have gotten thrown into this was the Georgia-Auburn game because Auburn was up 10-0, and then there was a debatable fumble from Jackson Arnold at the goal line. That review took about 3 hours. This game was as long as a Monday. I mean, it was like, my goodness gracious, it just wouldn't end. There were so many reviews. There were a lot of egregious calls. There were a lot of missed calls. We had the infamous Kirby timeout/clapping moment there. Lots of funky things were going on in this game with the officiating. But that fumble I was referring to when Auburn was up 10-0, Jackson Arnold at the goal line. It was one of the closest reviews you'll ever see. The call on the field was a fumble at the time. It was going to be hard to overturn whichever call that it was on the field. They ended up ruling it a fumble, upholding the call. That swung the momentum. Georgia goes down. They kick a field goal, and then Georgia scores 10 points in the third quarter to take the lead. They added a touchdown in the fourth, and that was that. Auburn's momentum was completely slashed when that fumble happened, which you could sense in the stadium. That's like, man, it took the air out of this place, and they had to do something in order to get it back, and they just weren't able to do that. So Georgia goes into Jordan-Hare in a really, really tough environment and tricky matchup, and they escape with a win that is going to be huge in conference play, because if Georgia had gone down and got its second conference loss here by October 11th, look at this schedule on the way down. They've got Ole Miss coming to town this week, Florida a follow to start November because they have the bye the following week. They got Mississippi State, then they have Texas, Charlotte, and Georgia Tech on the road. Georgia has a tough schedule on this back end. There are 3 losable games on there, and then 2 you got to be careful games. So for Georgia, that win in Auburn, enormous for their SEC and college football playoff hopes. Kirby Smart's team found a way to win. Gunnar Stockton and company battled back, and that one right there is going to be huge for Georgia as we enter in this stretch run. I know I told you that I wasn't going to talk about Penn State and Northwestern, but I am going to give you a note I did not include at the top of the show, and that is going to be an update on Drew Aller. He is Penn State's quarterback. He has a knee injury, not yet been completely specified, but James Franklin did say in his final post-game press conference that Drew Aller is going to miss the rest of the season, which means Eli Grunkmeyer is going to be the starting quarterback, or Ethan Grunkmeyer is going to be the starting quarterback for Penn State for the rest of the season, unless something else happens there or they decide to make a change with their third string, which I would not foresee happening. So Grunkmeyer going to be the one under center. He's a former top 150 recruit. We will see if he is better in Kotelnicki's offense. If there's any more life left in that program, they need to find it now. Moving on, going to the Big Ten, though. I had high hopes for Sharon Moore, Bryce Underwood, and the Wolverines as Michigan went into the Coliseum to play USC. And I told you on the show on Thursday that the winner of this game was going to put their team in position to A, be an outside contender in the Big Ten, but also be one that is going to contend for the Big Ten, for the college football playoff, in addition to the Big Ten. And this was a trajectory game for the program. This was for Lincoln Riley. It's I need a marquee win. I need a signature win, and we need a win that's going to catapult us. Sherrone Moore in Michigan, yeah, he has that because they had won a national title a couple of years ago. He has the signature wins because he beat Ohio State and Alabama last year. Yeah, they've struggled this year against equal competition, and that's going to be Oklahoma. Nebraska was an interesting contest. And then you've got USC here. You got the doors blown off you in this one. I was very disappointed in Michigan's performance in this game. I expected them to go in there and win. They were a pitiful 2 for 9 on third down. Did not really run the football all that well. They ran it for nearly 300 yards a year ago. You could tell that was a point of emphasis from USC to take that away, force Bryce Underwood to be one-dimensional as a thrower, although he did beat him a little bit with his legs. Michigan ran for 109 yards. And they threw for 207. So you got to give Underwood his flowers through the air. But on the ground, Michigan not able to get it done. USC, though, 6 for 12 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down. Nearly 500 yards of offense. They were completely balanced here. 265 through the air, 224 on the ground. Both teams had 2 turnovers, so they stay even right there. But Jada Mayava, 265 yards and 2 scores. Underwood, 207 yards and 2 scores. Quarterbacks both played well. But Michigan's run defense and Michigan's running game was the difference in this matchup. And USC gets a monstrous win. USC here, they've got this big date with Notre Dame. If they can win that on Saturday, this is a night game in South Bend. If USC can beat Notre Dame on Saturday, they are going to have an inside track to the college football playoff, defeating Michigan and Notre Dame back to back. Then they have Nebraska. So this is the stretch run. This is the prove it to me spot. This is the gotta have it spot for USC. Yeah. Can you afford a loss and be 10-2? Yes. Do you want to? No. I think USC needs to win these games. I think they need to get some respect because at the end of the year, they're going to be waiting on Oregon and UCLA. So USC right now, for confidence reasons, for playoff reasons, for future reasons, they need this game on Saturday pretty badly. And again, that's going to be a tough matchup because CJ Carr and Notre Dame are playing really good football. Ever since those losses early in the season, they have turned it around. They're looking to run the table to get into the college football playoff. Notre Dame cannot lose. So they are going to be in that, quotes, not the same though as Texas, desperation mode. So something to watch, something to keep your eye on as we continue to move through the schedule. One game I have not talked about yet is Ohio State, Illinois. We spent a lot of time talking about the Big Ten on this show with James Franklin of Penn State. Ohio State, though, is 6-0. The Buckeyes gave up 16 points. One was a late touchdown, so garbage time, but it still counts on the scoreboard. Ohio State's now given up only 41 points on the season. That is a historic mark. And Ohio State, they can beat you a lot of different ways. This is the number 1 team in the country. They may not stay the number 1 team in the country for the whole season, but for right now, to survive yesterday's results, that's a sleepy spot in Champaign. That's a tricky spot in Champaign. Brett Bielema is a great coach. That's a solid program at Illinois. That's a good team at Illinois. Luke Altmaier is a great quarterback. But Illinois had 3 turnovers yesterday. Ohio State controlled the game. What did I tell you? I said, can somebody score 3 times on Ohio State? And then that was my question. Illinois did that. But my other question was, can somebody control Ohio State? Illinois did not do that. Illinois had 3 turnovers in the game. And Illinois did not control Ohio State. Ohio State did control the game with its defense. And they tried to control it with the run game. The Buckeyes play so methodically. They squeeze you and attack you. Joel Klatt called them like a pride of lions, that defense. What Matt Patricia has done with this defense is remarkable. We talked about it on the Thursday show, so I won't repeat a lot of it. But Ohio State can beat you so many different ways. And that's what makes this team so unique, so special, so deep, so talented. And it almost feels like you have to play perfect to beat them. Because you know what? If you drag them into the mud, they've proven that they can win it. We know with Julian Sand's arm, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Max Clare, Brandon Ennis, that they could air it out and beat you. We know that they can do that. They haven't had to do it yet, but we know they can. Ohio State's run game is the thing that concerns me. And you know what? I said on this show, I was a guest on another show last week. I hosted as a fill-in on a bunch of nuts, previewing this game. Went about 30 minutes. I said, if Ohio State's run game doesn't really work or get moving in a game, are they going to be okay? That was one of my concerns for the Buckeyes. Yeah, they're going to be okay. Now, do they want to do that? No. Are there better teams in the country than Illinois? Yes. Ohio State still won the game by 18 points, and they could have won it by more. That's the thing. Ohio State is beating teams very soundly and very thoroughly. So this Ohio State team is really good, and they are the top team in the country. Miami's the second best, and Indiana's third, in my opinion. Those are mine. We're going to look at the AP poll now. A little bit of beef to pick with this one here. I'm going to read you the top 10 in order here. Ohio State, Miami, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss. That is your top 5. 6 through 10 is Alabama, Texas Tech, Oregon, Georgia, and LSU. What you're going to notice if you pull up the AP poll is omitting Illinois and Washington. Washington has one loss. Do you know who that loss is to, you may ask? We mentioned it on the show. Ohio State. How are they not ranked? If that was an SEC team, they would be ranked. In fact, Missouri is 5-1. Their loss is to Alabama. What is Missouri ranked, you might ask? 16th. Need I say more? Preseason rankings are very influential. Here's a case study of that. If Washington was undefeated, they would be ranked. Washington has one loss. They should be ranked. Illinois, they have 2 losses. Do you know who Illinois' 2 losses are to? Ohio State and Indiana. What are the Buckeyes and Hoosiers ranked? 1 and 3. How are you not ranked? How? USC has 1 loss. They are ranked 20th. I'm not fully getting the logic between these AP poll voters. Do they watch football? Do they take other results into consideration? What is the process? I mean, glaring issues every single week. We've got to get this fixed. Thankfully, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee will do that. And I would expect Washington to be ranked there in the playoff committee's rankings. That is just how I see it. That's what I think. I think Washington should be ranked. I am good on the top 5. Those are my top 5 teams as well. I think there's no doubt right now your top 3 are Ohio State, Miami, and Indiana. You can interchange them in any order. I think that's the correct order right now from what we have seen on the field. So for that, I am good with the AP poll top 5. You can start arguing once you get after that with Alabama, Texas Tech, Oregon, Georgia, LSU. Then we got Tennessee, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame climbing back in with 2 losses. Again, make it make sense. Notre Dame's losses, who are they to? Miami. So Miami is sitting there at number 2. Texas A&M sitting there at number 4. They have 2 losses, and they are ranked 13. And Illinois' 2 losses are Ohio State and Indiana 1 and 3, and they are not ranked. Make that make sense. Is that a logo ranking? Possibly. So all the things that we need to think about as we move right along through this college football season. Again, AP poll, it's there. It's a reference point. Yeah, sure. It puts a number by these teams. The selection committee's rankings are going to come out here in just a couple of weeks. They're the ones that you want to keep your focus on. But guys, a lot to react to here from week 7. This was a lot. There's a lot to go through here. A lot of big results. A&M continues to win. Ole Miss struggled. There were things we didn't even get to. But that's why we have the Thursday show, because we're going to turn the page to week 8. Hard to believe we're already here. Guys, coverage, the shows, everything's only going to continue to get better as the season goes on. make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Make sure that you are following the podcast feeds. Make sure that you are following on socials. Make sure that you're doing these things so you do not miss anything, because there are so many talking points. There are so many storylines. There's so many great games. We've got you covered here at Saturday Cadence, the heartbeat of college football. Guys, follow on social media at Saturday Cadence. Like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us online, tsilverbulletin.com. You can find me on social media at Blake Biscardi, especially on TikTok. Go ahead and give that a follow there for some news updates and some behind the scenes stuff. Again, we appreciate you guys listening as always to the show and all the support that you give us. And we are going to see you on the Thursday show. So in the meantime, digest it all, take a breath, let's recalibrate, and let's get ready for week 8. Guys, appreciate you listening. We'll see you on the Thursday show with David and Grant. God bless.